We're live on YouTube.
Okay, hello.
Okay, great. So hello everyone.
Hello.
I am Lucy Monroe, and this is Book Chat with my friend Carrie Nichols and our special guest Traci Douglass. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I write mostly contemporary romance right now, although I've got a historical in the works from the 1920s. So we'll see what happens with that. Carrie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Carrie Nichols, and I write mostly for Harlequin Special Edition. My fifth book was out on the shelves. I think it's the Sergeant's Matchmaking Dog. You might still be able to find it in a couple of places, but I think today was the day they rolled over and the next months were put out. But you can still get digital, or you might find it in other places. I write small town contemporary, usually with kids and animals and stuff like that, and humor in it.
Cool. Okay, and hi everybody. I'm the special guest. I'm Traci Douglass. I write contemporary and paranormal romance for Harlequin and Entangled Bliss and Thule Publishing. My books, my tagline is heartfelt healing, happily ever after. So that kind of sums up what you'll get when you read one of my books, regardless of what subgenre it is. And I haven't gotten my, of course this won't work. Anyway, I haven't gotten my books yet. So I don't have, I was going to show the cover. This is my, oh crap. Sorry.
Technology.
This is my
Technology. What can we say? We're live. You gotta
Okay, here.
roll with the punches.
There we go. This is my new release that's coming out in November. It's called Costa Rican Fling with the Doc, and it's my first season romance. So that's kind of why I'm here today. So we'll see how it goes.
It's very exciting. Marcia said hello or good morning, ladies.
Oh, good.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Marcia.
And I'll keep an eye on the chat on my other screen. So if I'm looking over, it's just because I'm seeing if anyone else is making any comments. But we just kind of wanted to chat about season romance today. And I'm excited, Traci, to talk about your book because oh, cool. I just love it. I love an older hero. I love an older heroine together. I'm not as keen on May-December romances. I'll be honest about that one. You know, and it's like everybody's got their preference, but you know, that's just, I really like it when
I don't see as many of those anymore these days.
No.
The May-December. I don't see that as often.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I know I've read a couple that seemed okay because I guess if the heroine is maybe not so old in years, but in life experience or what she's gone.
It totally work. It's just, but I really love it when they're both in their middle age, and older. Yeah. And I just think that's a lot of fun because obviously as I go into my later years and I still have a romantic relationship.
I'm already there.
Right? I figure that it's kind of fun to read about people that I identify.
Oh yeah, I think it's great to see yourself reflected in the stories. I mean, that's why I read. Well, I read to experience new stuff too, but also to be able to relate to the characters. So I think it's great to see characters of all ages represented.
Absolutely. That's the thing. It's not like I don't want to read characters of a particular age. It's that I like the fact that there are other books out there. It's kind of it's part of the diversity of romance that we see, and we like to see that it just increases, that diversity increases in the types of characters that we have and their ages, their backgrounds, everything, the style of romance. I mean, the combinations are limitless, which is kind of fun as an author. This is really exciting. The book that I have a book coming out in October of next year, or this year, sorry, October of this year. And no, not it's the one in March of next year. See, I can remember things. Yeah. But my March book of next year, my heroine is 35 and my hero is 30. And I had a lot of fun because that's not May-December for me. Because that's just a 5-year age gap for me. That's kind of like, once you get past the 20s, that's really negligible, And but the fact that she's older is a sticking point for her in the beginning. it's not for him. And so that's a really fun kind of thing to play with. But what was your favorite thing when you were writing your season characters, Traci? Like what getting into them?
One of the really fun things was for me was to be able to write about people who had a huge, I mean, they've lived their lives. They've gone through so much stuff and they've come through it. Now, at the beginning of the book, they've come through it, but not maybe in the best way, you know, the things that they're dealing with. My heroine, Sarah Parker, is a nurse. It's a medical romance, so both characters are in the medical field. My heroine is named Sarah, and she's a nurse, and she's 42. And she takes an early retirement from her hospital job in the NICU in Chicago. Her son is now in college, so she's raised him, and he's, you know, off doing his thing out in California. And, you know, she's ready to kind of live her life. She raised her son alone. You know, she went through that whole hardship with that. And she had a bad experience with her husband. So she's very closed off at the beginning of the book because of that. And she, you know, she's used to relying on herself and not other people, and she's fine with that. And she's just ready to kind of go out and travel and see and do things that she's put off for a long time because of raising her son. She always put him first, and now it's kind of time for her to put herself first. And then my hero that she meets, I'm sorry. Am I talking too much?
No. I just love that kind of a setup.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's
know
a really
what that was
meaty,
like when your kids move out and it's like, oh, what am I now?
Well, it's a really meaty thing for an author to be able to dig into that because there's so much to work with there, you know. And then my hero, his name is Gabriel Novak, and he is actually he's from Croatia, and he's 55, so he is 13 years older than Sarah, and he has been through a lot in his life. He lived through the Croatian wars, and he lost family in the wars, and he felt very responsible for that. And so once his wife and his children died during that war, he shut himself off too for different reasons, because he didn't feel like he had he, as a man, he didn't feel like he could protect the people that he loved. So rather than risking losing someone again, he just shut himself off. And he left his home country, and he's kind of been an itinerant doctor. He works for a charity organization, and he goes into these war-torn places because he knows what it's like to go through that, and he can really relate to those people. And so at the beginning of the book, you know, he's at that point and she's at this point, and they both end up volunteering for the same charity organization in Costa Rica, and they're working together through that. And that's kind of the catalyst that drives them through the story, and gets them to their happily ever after eventually, after they both kind of come to grips with their backstories. So
sounds really good. Hey, let me read a couple of comments from people who joined us. First of all, we've got some good mornings from Penny Watson and Jay Anderson. Marcia said, I had a real life March to December romance. And Jay Anderson said, hey, I was 43 when I married. Soon it will be 20 years. Penny Watson said, as a 55-year-old, I now think of 30-something characters as babies.
Right?
And Marcia laughed. I mean, Marcia wrote, oh dear, Penny, 55 is young to me. I'm 70. And I just love it. So they're just kind of chatting, and that's wonderful. Penny did say, Traci, that hero sounds wonderful. And I love that people are interacting, because this is such a fun concept, a fun news area of diversity in romance. Not that there has never been the older. They've been going for a while, but I think the last 5 years, we've seen more books than ever before in a year. You know, each year has more books with the seasoned romance, with the seasoned characters, which I'm really, really loving. One of my favorite authors of this is Reese Ryan. and also we all read
I love Reese Ryan. Yeah.
She's awesome. We all read the same book, Apples Should Be Red.
Yes.
Carrie, who was that by again? That's Penny.
Penny.
That's
Penny.
Penny Watson. You wrote an amazing book, lady. We all loved it. It was so good. So thanks for joining us. Oh, you just love how I'm like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, hers really were seasoned, what, 59?
I love that.
52 or something,
That set up with those two characters and how they brought out the best in each other in their seasoned age. That's one of the things I love the most. It was because it showed that you can grow and change regardless of your age, that there's always a chance for romance, even if you're not necessarily open to it, because I don't think either one of them was necessarily open.
I don't think they were lking for it in the beginning.
And, so it's like such a good book. And I really enjoyed the story. I had so much fun with those characters. It was one of those stories that lingers with you because the characters were very fully realized. Neither one of them were perfect, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was, quite the character.
Yeah. Just before we came on, you said something about how he stayed in character, and there was this scene where
at the very end, when they, when you hear about, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it yet, but it's like, that sounds like him. Right. You knew that he hadn't,
he didn't lose his grumpy lovingness,
Yes.
Of course, the other thing is, I think both Carrie and I love a grumpy hero. How about you, Traci? Because grumpy hero.
Oh, I love a grumpy hero. I love, those are some of my favorites to read and to write. I love grumpy heroes. I love the cinnamon roll heroes where they're, they seem grumpy on the outside, but then you get inside, they're all melty and gooey and sweet. And that's like my ultimate hero. I love that kind of hero. So definitely.
Because he was, I mean, and he really, Tom, that was his name. Yeah. He really looked out for her. I thought, he understood where she was coming from, and, he really, he didn't put her down, or, he helped her come out of her shell.
I really love that, because I think that it's just the other side of that protective hero that I love to write and present, or that it's I'm married to a guy like that, right? Like he's good to me, but so often I get comments, how did you find a guy like that, or whatever, and it's like almost like men who really care about the women in their lives are this unicorn, and they're not. I mean, we have this experience, we know, but I love to see it in a book and see it written with these really realistic characters who are just, like I said, not perfect, because that's, to me, fun. Now, Carol, you have a book that has some seasoned characters.
Well, I mean, the heroine is 33, so I mean,
we're 30 at this point. I mean, I know we all look at that.
It's not old, but she's, she isn't married, she doesn't have a family, and that's, she wants to have a family. She feels like, she grew up in a lot of her childhood was spent in foster care, and she just wants. And she had been engaged, and when the engagement broke up, she realized, wow, she lost his family and she lost a lot of their friends. And so, but that's what she wants. She wants home, family, roots. And at 33, you got to start thinking, well, I don't have a whole lot of years left to be popping out babies. And so, of course, the hero doesn't believe in happily ever after. He doesn't want to get married. He doesn't want kids. I mean, he loves kids. Of course, that's the whole sticking point with her. She sees them with their friends' kids, and, she's like, he'd be perfect, but, he doesn't want it. And so she doesn't want to become involved with him because they've got they both belong to the same group of friends. She's made all new friends, and she doesn't want to lose them because she feels like the newcomer to the group, and she feels like, her girlfriends won't ghost her, she thinks, but how would she feel doing activities as couples, and if he brought somebody else, how would she feel? So
I do think that the older the characters, the more realistic that particular motivation is, that we we can really identify with an older character over the age of 30 who's established basically their family by choice, and then the fear of losing that family. It's not that a young 20-something doesn't have those same fears. It's just that you just know that as you get older, it gets harder. We know that it gets
harder to make
new
friends, those
and develop that family around you. So if you lose the one you built up, where do you go from there? I know that with my book that's coming out in October, oh my gosh, we have a title for it. I forgot I had a title. This is not age, guys. This is just, posters and too many meds. That's what I refuse to think this is age. Okay, so but it's the cost of their royal fling. And Jenna is my heroine, and readers will have met her in Queen by Royal Appointment. Now she's 35. She's never been married. She's never been in a major relationship. She doesn't want children, and there's a really serious reason why. And so she's totally focused on her career. And now suddenly, it's not like she all of a sudden wants family. She's just all of a sudden faced with a guy who could be the guy. And what do you do then if you've had all these plans in your life and your focus is this area, and all of a sudden, and I think that's kind of realistic, because I mean, I don't know, we've all known people like that. We've known, had friends, sisters, whatever, that went through that kind of like, how do I make this work? And can I bring this into my life? And I don't know, I just love it. But I do love the season romance. Carol and I read another book together, The Canine Protector.
Yeah.
And, good. I have it on my Kindle.
Yeah.
And that book, the season characters were so well done. And the secondary characters she brought in children, and it just was so well done, because it showed characters in a different place in life than we usually see in romance. Again, that place of like having your kids that have just kind of left the nest, but aren't really gone, because I'm a parent of adult children, and they're not really gone. And they're like,
they never really leave.
And I love them. They're my best friends. I don't want them to be really gone. I love that we are so close. But yes, our lives intertwine. And yes, I'm still making choices based on what works for the family and not just my husband and I. And that's okay. Like, I think that's awesome. And I kind of want to read a little bit about characters they have to kind of deal with some of that a little bit, in addition to, can we make this new relationship work?
Yeah, because Penny has another one too, A Taste of Heaven. That's got older characters too. I don't remember the exact ages, and if you like grumpy, he's grumpy, huh?
I love grumpy. Penny said she picked those ages because no one was dealing with that age group. And I love that. I really love that. And Marcia said she liked Canine Protector too. And when she said Canine Protector was awesome. But I love that, when you see a gap and you kind of like step in and say, well, what if, can I tell this story? And there's other authors who've done that too. And it's like, we've talked a little bit like Reese Ryan, and Karen Booth did Gray Hair, Don't Care. There's just a lot of authors out there that have done some really wonderful seasoned romance. And, I'm going to put a shout out. There's a Facebook group that I really love. I'm kind of a silent observer, but it's really neat because it's focused on the seasoned romance. It's called Romance in Her Prime. And you can find it on Facebook. It's a neat group, and it deals with, like, she posts, about different books with the season romance theme in it. And it's a really great group. But like I said, I'm a silent observer in it, because, you don't use so much interaction, or at least I can. So anyway.
And I think we're, I don't know, I'll speak just for myself, but I'm a seasoned writer. But we have to have those feelings about falling in love and what it's like in order to write about it. So, I mean, it doesn't like, at a certain age, that cuts off and you can't,
No, right. I
feel all that.
You lose that a bit. Like, I am still so much in love with my husband. I'll say that when we went through the cancer scare this summer, and my surgery and all of this stuff, my husband was he was such a romance hero. He came in and he sat and he put his hand on my leg on the bed. He did not move until I left the hospital. He would not leave my side. When I got home, he came in even when I was sleeping on the bed and just put his hand on me to make sure I was still there. And he told me that. He was like, I just had this terrible fear I could lose you. And I'm like, that's real. That is what we put in our stories. That's where that well comes from, is that I know that feeling, and having that amazing love directed this way is such a gift. But I want to share it with the world, because not everyone's in a great relationship, but we read romance to embrace that concept of great relationship. And we read romance to read that it can happen. And I know when I was a young kid, like 12, 13, I was in a real dysfunctional home, and my dad was not that guy. And I read romance, and I got this thing in my head that if somebody could write these books, those men had to really exist. Not necessarily the billionaires, but the concept of a guy who put honor ahead of, his own desires, someone who put his family first, someone who didn't get violent with his kids, someone, like that kind of a thing. And I'm not saying I never saw that in uncles or whatever, but it was more visceral when I read it. And I think that's because books were my friend as a child. They were like that. Yeah. So what kind of drove you guys to like the love of romance to begin with? Because I think that that's kind of partly where our love for season romance comes, and the desire to see it still in our age today.
Well, I know it's me, because for me, I want the happily ever after. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I can't fix everybody else's life, but I can at least, these two characters that I create, I can make sure that they live happily ever after, even if the people I see around me can't or don't. And and I understand some people are maybe even happier or better off getting divorced and don't belong together. But I don't know, it just always saddens me to think of that, and this way
I happy endings.
Yes, I can give them happy endings.
Yep. I totally get that. I'm the same way. I am a firm believer that everyone deserves their happily ever after. I don't care what color they are, what age they are, what disability they might have, what sexual orientation they are. I think everybody deserves a happily ever after and deserves to see themselves on the page. And so when I write my books, I always start with the characters, and I always really try to be thoughtful about that and think, what as a reader have I not seen, or what would I like to see in a romance? And that's kind of where I start. And then I build my story around that. And, I read across the spectrum. I read, across the romance spectrum. I read some outside of the romance genre. I like all kinds of books. And, I want to see, more representation on the page across the spectrum. And when I first started reading it, and I didn't really even think about this until I was here having this conversation with you guys, but when I first started, the first Harlequins that I picked up when I was a teenager, one was by Penny Jordan, and one was by Charlotte Lamb, and they were both presents authors. And these were I don't know, back in the 90s. And they, both of those stories had kind of a Cinderella aspect to them a little bit, because the heroines were not your typical romance heroines. They weren't the pretty, perfect, woman, finding her true love, whatever. The Penny Jordan was an older, and I can't remember the name of it, but the hero's name was Oliver, and the woman was an older real estate agent. And their cute meet was he stole her parking space in the parking lot. And then he ended up being her, she was renting out half her house, and he ended up being her renter. And they were both in their late 30s, early 40s. And even back as a teenager, I liked that, because it was something different than, everything else, back when you're a teenager, you feel like an outcast and you don't feel like you belong anywhere. So when you see these kind of quirky characters who also feel like they don't belong anywhere, then you kind of relate to that. So I really love that. And that's still one of my favorite books. I haven't read it in years, but that was the Penny Jordan. And then the Charlotte Lamb one, she did a little mini series set in Australia at a newspaper. And it was like all these different executive people.
Fun,
and it was super fun. And it was like the third or fourth book in the series. And it was a woman who was older, and she had been very heavy set, and she lost weight, and but she hadn't dated a lot or anything like that, and she fell in love with the guy who cut her lawn. Her lawn guy. Yeah, and they had this whole romance, and then it turns out that he actually was fairly wealthy. I mean, he had like a whole lawn business and everything, but her family didn't like him, and they thought she was wealthy.
I read that
book.
Thought
that sounds familiar.
And she thought that
I love that book. I have
yes, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was so good.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. And my favorite book of yours, Lucy, and I looked it up last night, and I'm gonna screw the title up again, I'm sure of it, but it was the first Scorsellini book with Tommaso as the main character, because that had kind of a Cinderella kind of a feel to it as well, because they met in college, but she didn't know who he really was, and they were good friends, and she was in love with him, but then he didn't know it, and he left, and he was a big duty head about it and everything. And then
he was.
I love that book, and that has stuck with me for years since I read it. So, but I mean, that's kind of what I got into, and that's why I loved writing the season romance so much, because you don't see it. And I pushed the envelope a little bit on the characters. I mean, I kind of made Gabe kind of as old as I could, kind of get him, with my editor being okay with it. And, Sarah, I even pushed her a little bit older too, because I really wanted them to have that life experience. And with them to be where they were in their medical careers, there's a level of education they have to reach, and that takes time. Realistically, they had to be that age.
True. Let me read some more comments from people. Penny Watson said, having decades of a relationship makes a story have more depth. And Marcia said, I love the high school sweethearts. It's Marcia Scott, guys. I'm sorry, just call her Marcia because we know her. I love the high school sweethearts get together after umpteen years. Oh, so do I. As long as it works for me. Every once in a while, you'll do one where it's like, he was such a jerk, and then she's supposed to like him now. No, wait a minute. And then Jay Anderson said, I promised myself I was not going to marry a slack-jawed house ape. Waited until I met a sweet, loving man who moved countries to be with me and help raise my sister's children. Wait for the best. I love that.
Wow. That sounds like
awesome. Yes. And so there's more chats and people saying that they love the books we're talking about. Thank you, Penny. And Jay Anderson, one of my favorite things is to find treasures in an old secondhand shop. I found an old Essie Summers in a store in Scotland. Yes. Wow. I love when you go into the used bookstore and you get the books that are not in print anymore. You can't even get them digitally. And then here's this little piece of gold you get to read from the past. Yeah. And I just love that. I mean, I love used bookstores, period. I just think they're fantastic. They keep our books out there. So as an author, I think they're amazing. As a reader, I think they're amazing. They're just, they're a great way for readers, a lot of readers, to get to read books they wouldn't otherwise get to read. So I love that aspect of it.
I recently bought off of eBay an old Harlequin romance. And it was funny because it was by an author. She's on Stacey Absalom. She only wrote like 4 books. So, and I didn't have that one, so I bought it. And it was so funny because I read it, and I had read years and years ago a Harlequin romance, probably at the library because I don't have the book. And the only thing I remembered about it was the heroine worked on like a canal boat in England. and she had claustrophobia, and the boat had to go through a tunnel on its route. And I that was like the only aspect that I remembered was her going through the tunnel. And I got this book. It was called Knave of Hearts, and because it was by Stacy, so I bought it and I read it. And the heroine
was the book.
That was the story.
I love it when that happens.
I love that.
I love that.
Yeah. And that was funny because that was the only aspect I remembered of the book. So it was hard to look it up because, you know.
The Harlequin Connection group on Facebook for the Harlequin readers, they do that sometimes. People will post in there, like they'll only remember like 2 details
One
about
little
the book,
part,
and they'll be like, "Can anybody help me?" And people remember that.
Yeah. Because lots of times if you have
all of
enough information, you can Google it, but I didn't remember really. That's all I remembered from the book.
That's fantastic. That's so cool. That is so awesome. I remember the first romance I ever read. I was like 12 or maybe 13, and I was vacationing with my parents, and I wasn't supposed to have it. I found it in a used like book pile, and I snuck it in, and I would read it at night. But it was called Silver Angel, and it was by Joanna Lindsay. Oh my God. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. This book was like it for me. Oh my Lord. It had like the old cover with the woman with all this silver hair, and this half naked dude with dark hair was like ravishing her on the cover. Oh, it was amazing. I just thought it was the best thing I had ever seen in my life. At 13, I did. I just thought it was
my first
and
romance.
After that, I was a solid romance reader. I was like, boom, this is what I
that was it.
So,
yeah. Mine was The Scarlet Pimpernel. I mean, that's a real old classic. And I remember reading it the first time I read it. It was, I picked it up because it was, I was 6th, 7th grade, and it was, you have to read one of these books that's on this shelf here, So I picked that one up, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, the whole thing. The French Revolution, the whole bit that, he disguised himself and all of this. Yes. But it was so funny because I got to the end of the book, and at the end, when they reconcile, he picks her up and he carries her off to his cabin on his yacht. And then it ended, and I'm like, well, that's a stupid ending. Why did you do that? I'm like, all right, whatever. And then a few years later, I read it again and got to the end and went, oh, okay.
Oh, now you know. That's so funny. That's hilarious.
The first time it just flew over my head.
Over your head. Yeah. Right over your head.
Oh, yeah. Why was he in such a hurry? Why didn't they stop to talk to him? But he was just, he was getting her in the cabin.
Well, things to do.
We have got just a few more minutes, so let's reiterate real quick. We read Apples Should Be Read by Penny Watson.
Penny Watson. Oh, it's wonderful.
I recommend her other books. Yes. We read Canine Protector by
Julie Miller. It's a Harlequin intrigue.
Love the way she handled
August 2020.
So well done. Traci, can you tell us the title of your book again? The month it's coming out?
Yep, it's Costa Rican Fling with the Doc, and it's coming out November 1st from Harlequin Medical Romance. So,
woohoo! Okay. For anyone in the US, those are available digitally everywhere. I think you can order the print book via Walmart.com. Yeah. So if you like,
and also on Amazon. Yep,
Amazon has the print. Okay. Yeah.
You can get your book in print if you want your book in print. And Carrie, you want to share your book that you're working on? Because I know
that's it's going to be Her Hero Next Door, and that'll be March 2022.
We're going to have books out together, so we're going to do something about this because I think that's going to be fun. And my book is called of Their Royal Fling, and it's March of 2022 as well. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is crazy. Anyway, thank you both for joining. And
thank you. This went by so fast.
Was fun. Yeah, I really
it was so fun.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Chatted. This was so great, and thank you for sharing your comments. Let me just I'm going to quickly read just a few more reader comments before we close off. So Penny Watson said, I love the vintage tone of those older HPs. Marcia Scott said, I started out with a Phyllis A. Whitney, Victoria Holt, and Mary Stewart. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, Mary Stewart.
Yes, yes.
Penny Watson said, I basically got through the entire pandemic year rereading all of my favorite romance novels. You and me both, sister.
Yeah.
HPs, paranormal, everything. And I do read across the board. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read mystery. I love fiction. I'm not a huge fan of literary fiction, guys. Sorry about that one, but I've got to have a sense of growth from the beginning to the end.
Yes, and I know Penny and I have similar tastes with Harlequin Presents, the older ones, because lots of times on her page she'll mention a older Presents, and I usually pick it up and like, oh yeah.
We've read that one. And Virginia Nelson said, sorry, I'm late. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Virginia.
And Penny Watson said, congrats, Tracy. Congrats to all the new releases. Marcia Scott said, love you ladies. XOXO. We love you too, Marcia. And Virginia Nelson said, oh, I love a good royal romance. Yay, because I have a whole trilogy of them.
You have some royals, yeah.
And Penny Watson said, yay for old people. Yes. And Marcia said, I love old people, Penny. And that's what this podcast has been about, or videocast, or whatever you call this.
Whatever it is, yes.
It has been season romance, and we love it, and we hope you love it as much as we do.
Yeah.
So talk to y'all later.